So good morning, everyone. Welcome to RECCO's monthly fellowship
This meeting
assembly.
is being recorded.
Yes, we're well aware of that. Thank you. I love it when the computers tell us what is going on. But snowy day, as I mentioned, here in Red Deer, and I'm going to turn things over to Jim. He's already introduced quite a few of you. Thank you, Jim, and I'll let you get started.
Okay. Kim couldn't be here today to introduce Dr. Temple, Dr. Walley Temple, but she asked me to read this introduction. So in Kim's words, I'm sorry I can't be present to introduce my friend, Walley Temple, today. Walley is an amazing person who has done some fantastic things in his life. Early in Walley's medical career, he did medical missionary work in the Churchill area, providing care for the local and remote communities. Later, Walley was the chief oncologist at the Tom Baker Cancer Center up until his retirement. This role certainly had a positive impact on the lives of thousands of Albertans. His kind and nurturing nature eventually united him with Rotary. Walley recognized the impact of cervical cancer on women and their communities in impoverished areas. To this end, he continued his missionary focus to implement a cervical screening program in Quito, Ecuador, where he screened 2,000 women while ensuring the sustainability of the project by educating local healthcare workers. Currently, Walley has a global grant to screen 9,000 women in 6 states in Guatemala. This project includes educating girls about cervical cancer and vaccination programs, as well as training healthcare providers on screening techniques. Walley is the recipient of the 2024 Rotary's People of Action Champions of Impact. We are so honored to have Walley speak to us today. And Dr. Temple.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Oh, super. Okay, well, it's a delight to be here, and I had the pleasure of meeting Kim on a trip to Guatemala, and since then we've worked together, and I've discovered so many wonderful more Rotarians, which never ends, and it's a delight for me to be part of this organization and to present to you today. So if you want to put up some slides. Now, being a physician, I may be talking a little bit of medical talk, which if you're not sure what I'm saying, just interrupt, please, and I'll explain it better. And the first slide. So there we are. So today we're going to talk about cervix cancer, the first cancer conquered. So usually when we think about conquering cancer, we think about treating the disease and getting rid of it. However, today we're going to be talking about preventing the disease on a global basis, which is phenomenal, as you will see. Next slide, please. So around the world, 1 woman is diagnosed with this disease every minute, and 1 woman dies of cervix cancer every 2 minutes. Slide, please. And it can now be eliminated around the world, and we as Rotarians can help the World Health Organization global plan to eliminate this disease. Now, the science behind this challenge, I will explain. And I'm going to present briefly our cervix cancer screening experience in Ecuador and Guatemala with 2 Rotary completed global grants, and then present our current plans for our next Rotary project, implementing screening programs in over half of Guatemala. Slide, please. So for those that aren't familiar with anatomy, this is a schematic of the woman's womb, uterus, and the cervix is at the opening of the uterus as it enters the vagina. And it is the change in the lining of the vagina, and which is more like the inside of your mouth, to the lining of the uterus, which is more like glandular, which would be like in your bowel. And that junction is right at that tip and is the area where is susceptible to developing cancer. So that's where the cervix is, and that's what we'll be talking about during this presentation. Slide, please. So in November 2020, World Health Organization issued a call to action for the global eradication of cervix cancer. And this was endorsed by 194 member nations. I think there's only about 200 nations in the world, but that changes all the time. We now have the science and we have the political will to eliminate this disease, as we've done in smallpox, and now almost in polio. So you may not know, but Rotary International has already funded over 116 projects with $10 million focused on the prevention of this disease. And a number of our clubs in 5360 in Calgary region are part of this exciting goal for the global elimination of this terrible disease. And we have cooperation from clubs from British Columbia, from California, from Colorado, and other places in our global grants. Slide, please. So the World Health has created these goals for 2030 that if they're implemented, will save about 63 million women over the next 70 years. Their goal is to reduce cervical cancer incidence to less than 4 per 100,000 women, whereas many countries in the world are actually 40 per 100,000. And even in Canada and in North America, it is running around 8 to 12 per 100,000. So even we have not conquered it in the developed high-income countries. The goal is to vaccinate 90% of young girls and now boys under the age of 15, screen 70% of all women, and be able to treat 90% of the abnormalities that we discover. So that's the 2030 goals, of course. Eventually it'll be 100% for all of those. Slide, please. So this slide shows you a map of the distribution of cervical cancer, and the darker purple and blue areas are the areas of the highest incidence of this disease. And as you can see, it is almost entirely in the low and middle income countries in Central America, South America, Africa, and Asia. And in countries like North America, Europe, Australia, and the Middle East, there is a very low incidence, and related to mostly to the fact that pap smears has been, screening has been around for many decades. Slide, please. So about 600,000 women per year develop this disease, 1,000 per day die of it, and 90%, as I've shown you, is in low middle income countries. And it's the most common cause of cancer death in young women, even more than breast cancer, and is associated with 12% of all cancers in women. Slide, please. So this disease is particularly nasty. It affects women in their childbearing years, and their deaths result in about somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 orphans every year. It obviously exacts a huge economic toll on society with the disruption of the family. In low middle income countries, 1 in 40 women will contract this disease in their lifetime, and it's a very morbid cancer affecting all the organs in the pelvis. And in most poor countries, it presents as an advanced disease where only a few will get treatment and very few will be able to survive. Slide, please. So this disease is caused by the papillomavirus. So it's a relative of the virus that gives you plantar's warts. There's about 150 different variants of this virus that affects different places, but there are 12 high-risk variants that cause cervix cancer. It's transmitted by sexual contact, but probably also by other intimate contact, but it is ubiquitous and is really not a result of promiscuity, and 90% of sexually active men and women will be infected with this in their lifetime. And of course, HIV/AIDS are much more likely to get this disease because of their depression of their immune system. But despite the fact that 90% contract this infection, and 90% will actually eliminate it through their immune system, and only 10% will have a chronic infection, and those people will be susceptible to developing a cancer after 10 or 15 years. Slide, please. So this slide shows you the timelines of the infection and developing cancer. So on the left, you see the green arrow. With vaccination can prevent entirely the, and only one vaccination, the infection with the high-risk variants. But by the age, the next area there with the blue line, 70% of men and women by the age of 21 have already contracted it. And then you can see the fall off with the infection to 10% as people eliminate it with their immune system. But in those that have continued to carry the virus, you can see in the green line that you start getting the precancer at the late 20s, which carries on into the 30s. And at this point, you can screen these women and find the abnormalities and totally eliminate it, as I will show you with our project, and prevent the cancer. And then by the time in the red line, you can see the cancer start to develop after 30 years, increasing to 35, 40, and at which point treatment is fairly futile in the poorer countries. Slide, please. So obviously, the primary and the best prevention is simply vaccination. And this has been shown to be effective in studies with 83% reduction in infection at 5 years. And that's probably even better now with better vaccines. And it showed that in 1.6 million Swedish women vaccinated before the age of 17, which is not ideal, it should be 14, but they had only an incidence of 4 per 100,000 infected as compared to 94 per 100,000 unvaccinated women by the age of 30. And globally, only 12% of girls have been vaccinated to date. Slide, please. So this is a map showing where vaccination programs are accepted by governments as what they want to do, but unfortunately, despite the countries involved, usually the programs are not very effective unless in the lower middle income countries. So in Africa, 31% of countries have vaccination programs, Asia 40%, but then when you go to America and Europe, you're talking about 80% and plus having active vaccination programs. Slide, please. So the prevention of cervical cancer, fortunately, can be done with screening, as you're all familiar with the Pap smear approach over the many years. And 2 screens can reduce cancer by 60%. And unfortunately, even with our fairly effective screening for cervix cancer, we still are not getting to our marginalized populations of street people, indigenous women, and other areas where people are not accessing the healthcare system. Slide, please. So the Pap smear actually is very expensive and not very good in terms of picking up the cancers or the precancerous changes in one test. That's why you have to do many tests every year. It's calculated between $100 and $200 per test by the time you take the specimen, transport the specimen, identify it, go back, find the women. 20% will be false positive. So it's not a technology that can be transferred to low middle income countries. And it only identifies about 60% of abnormalities per test. In low and middle income countries, where we did in Ecuador, it only identified 1 in 50 women with abnormal tests. But it is used as a primary test in about 80% of countries around the world. And as I will show you, that will change in the near future. Slide, please. But the option for screening is very simple and is totally applicable to usage in low middle income countries. And what you do is expose the cervix with a speculum and swab it with a vinegar type solution, and the precancerous areas turn white. And all you have to do is apply either a freezing probe or a heating probe for a few minutes, which kills the abnormal tissue right at the cervix, at that junction that I talked about between the two surface coverings. And that prevents the cancer. And this equipment can be carried in a suitcase. Health worker can be trained in 1 week to screen and treat and prevent this disease. And this test probably costs only about $1 per patient. So basically, no pathology, no surgery, very simple. And that is the current standard in these countries for screening. It identifies as equally as much as the pap smear, about 70% of abnormalities with one test. But it is the advantage of this is that you can see the abnormalities and treat the patient immediately, which is called see and treat. And for the countries, low middle income countries, you have to remember that these women may not come back for 10 years, or they come only for childbirth or for emergencies. So you will not see them again in follow-up. So that's the other advantage of this approach is they will get their treatment within minutes of finding the abnormality, and you don't need to do follow-up. There is now a artificial intelligence created tool that takes a picture of the test, and it is used to supplement the human eye and increases the accuracy of finding the abnormalities to 95%. It's called a mobile colposcope. So you may have heard of colposcopy, which is the standard approach used with an abnormal pap smear. In high-income countries, this is a big, huge instrument, microscope, which is something that can't be carried around and takes a lot of education to how to use it. But this little cell phone-sized instrument that takes a picture of the test can tell you whether there's an abnormal finding consistent with precancer. Slide, please. So the data, and this may change year to year, but the last I read was 35% of women have been screened worldwide, most of them in high-income countries, and only 10% in poorer countries. Slide, please. So the future is to test for human papilloma virus itself. And that is done with a swab in the vagina and just tested like we test for COVID, where you put the swab in the nose and then put it into a little solution. And this is accurate around 90%, much better than PAP technology, much better than the visual inspection with acetic acid. And they have a mobile tabletop machine that you can carry around, and you can get the results in 1 hour. Once again, you can still use the see and treat approach. They also have done self-sampling, which is much more acceptable in many countries. This is now being used in about 40% of countries where they're doing this testing. Slide, please. But the advantage of HPV testing only without either pap smear or without the vinegar approach, it's more economical in that you only need to examine those women that are positive, which is about 10 to 20%. You can extend your screening interval to 5 years instead of what we do in young women, 1 to 2 years. And this is, in fact, the current World Health guideline that HPV testing will replace the pap smear as the initial screen. And if the HPV test is positive, then you will go to have a colposcopy. So unfortunately, in low middle income countries, the test still costs around $13 per test, which is, although economic, something that can't be afforded. So we are still depending mostly on VIA until this test becomes a lot cheaper. Slide, please. So this is all there is to thermocoagulator. A little generator, a little square box there. And then you have the handle attached to the probe, which the end of the probe you apply to the cervix as shown in the next slide, where you have the cervix and the button is placed on the opening of the cervix where the abnormal tissue is, which either freezes it and kills the tissue or it heats it and kills the tissue. And this is actually mostly painless, so you don't need any anesthesia. And there's essentially no morbidity from this treatment. So there's no follow-up care or complications or from it. So slide, please. So here's just a group of learners, and the learners can, they're often nurses, but they don't have to be nurses, healthcare workers that can be taught in a week how to do the visual inspection with acetic acid and then treat the abnormal areas. So that is the, actually that's a cryo gun that he's using on a model. So that's why it's such a useful thing to have in the these countries, because you can train, you don't need a lot of education to be able to screen women. Slide, please. So just to talk about the actual, once the tumor has become invasive, in early precancerous or cancerous stages in high-income countries, you get close to 100% cure. But unfortunately, when cancer is detected in these women in these poor countries, it drops dramatically to 50% if treatment's available, but only 10% to 20% are even seen in the low middle income countries. And the treatment requires major surgery and radiotherapy, which are both require huge resources that those countries do not have. Slide, please. So the human papillomavirus actually causes 5 other cancers in men and women, for counting over 100,000 cases globally per year. And these are in the perineum, the anal, vaginal, labial, and penile cancers. But the other area that is involved is mouth and throat cancers, which actually in North America are as many now as cervix cancers. So in fact, human papilloma virus is the cause of 15% of all the cancers in the world. And the good news is that these are also preventable with vaccination. So this isn't just a disease of cervix, it is, and women, it is also something that affects men as well. Slide, please. So in summary, we have the vaccines to prevent this disease if it's given under the age of 13 or 14, although it's still effective if it's given later. We now have effective screening and treatment for early cervix cancer that will present a lethal malignancy, and it can be employed even in the remotest parts of the world. And so these two advances make the vision of a world without cervix cancer a reality. Slide, please. So I just want to briefly talk about our experience with our global grants and what we've been able to accomplish in Guatemala and in Cuenca, Ecuador. Slide, please. So our first project, we got a global grant with the Port Moody Club, who were the international club. And we basically screened 2,000 women. We trained 8 gynecologists, and they trained the family doctor residents and continue to do that. So at the end of the project, they had trained 30 family doctor residents. And we treated 140 women for precancerous changes that prevented subsequent cancer. And this program is now sustainable, moving into other hospitals and to the surrounding rural areas where the family doctors are posted once they finish their training. Slide, please. And I'll just go to the next slide. So this is a project that we just finished in 2024, this January, in Guatemala. So our plan was to solidify prevention efforts in 5 states. We actually extended it to 6 states. We planned, had the objective of screening 5,000 women, and we actually screened 8,600 women. We planned to train 49 healthcare workers. We managed to train 65. We equipped 7 Ministry of Health clinics in these remote areas with thermocoagulators and examining tables. And we also purchased 1 of these mobile colposcopes. So those were, this was a very successful, and I credit the amazing team in Esther Broll and her club, and the NGO, which was related to the Partners in Surgery, called ACPC, for managing to do this even during the COVID epidemic. So with that experience, we are now moving on to phase 2 to extend, slide please, to extend it to another, to a total of 18 more states in Guatemala. So this is pictures I took when I was on a mobile mission to northern Guatemala. You can see the typical mountainous region, beautiful country. Slide, please. And this is a team for the mobile mission, and it typically took about 18 people to screen over 400 women in 5 days. Slide, please. And so the women gather in the morning, and they hear about the mobile screening clinic through the local radios, which actually are sort of illegal, but they function. They hear it through the health promoters, and some of these that are hired to be in the community to teach them the basics of health and help with post-op care when people have surgical procedures done. Some of these people will walk 2 to 3 days from their mountain village to come to these clinics. Slide, please. And the teaching is done very simply with flip charts and with a loudspeaker. And although the main language is Spanish, there are about 24 Mayan languages that have to be, when they do the examination, they have interpreters that can speak to the to these women in their own language. Slide, please. This is the simple equipment, just a little vinegar there. You can see swabs and a little bit of disinfecting wipes to do the examination with a speculum. And here you can see on the next slide the old machine, which was the cryosurgical machine, which took a huge tank of compressed nitrous oxide or carbon dioxide to create the freezing at the tip of that instrument right in the middle there. So this is Irma, and now this has been replaced with that small instrument I showed you, the thermocoagulator. So this means that we can now go into much more remote areas rather than carrying this 200-pound cylinder of gas to run a cryosurgery. So cryosurgery is really not practical anymore, although some of the places still have to use it until they get the thermocoagulators. Slide, please. So they're very creative and inventive, and this is a examining table when they don't have a regular one. And of course, this will be covered with a blanket, so it's not as uncomfortable as it looks. Slide, please. So our objectives for our new grant, which we'll be submitting hopefully this week, is to educate 20,000 women in 13 states about the disease. We're educating 100 nurses and technicians to screen and treat. And these will, we are gathering together actually 6 NGOs to work, who do this screening and providing them with the tools, the modern tools to do it. We're training 10 health promoters that will work in the communities full time. They live in those communities as well, which helps build the trust in the local people. And solidify prevention efforts in 18 states. We're going to equip our mobile clinics with these thermocoagulators, with mobile colposcopes, equip 15 health clinics, to screen 15 to 20,000 women over a 2-year period. We are developing an educational curriculum that can be used not only in Guatemala, but in other countries with a flip chart type approach to teach about the risks and prevention of cervix cancer, as well as to talk about the sexual health issues, menstruation and cervix, menstruation, which Days for Girls also does. So that will be sort of a parallel support program. We're going to facilitate vaccination with vaccine from the Ministry of Health, and we're going to test about 500 women with DNA testing, and we're going to implement the use of the mobile colposcope. So that is kind of the core of our new grant. Slide, please. So this is the monies that it will be about 190,000 with 45,000 for medical equipment, 65,000 for 4 training camps, 23,000 for HPV testing, and 42,000 for the mobile clinics. So that's kind of the breakdown of the budget we're hoping to reach. Slide, please. So this ends the presentation. This is Ariel Marroquin, who is actually our lead, who runs the program for Faith and Practice in Guatemala. And he's actually, this is in a remote village, and there's a little girl that's just had her cleft a lip and palate repaired. And the joy of this picture is that hopefully she can grow up as well as all the young women in Guatemala without the fear of cervix cancer. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So Vicki, since you're in Guatemala, are you have you had any exposure to Walley's program?
No, I haven't, but I certainly want to know more about it, and I would like to connect with you personally, Walley, to
Oh,
talk about how we can collaborate.
wonderful. Do you know Esther Broll and La Reforma club in Guatemala City?
No, we're associated with a Rotary Club in Guatemala City called Guatemala Norte.
Okay,
And we have in our organization a Rotary Interact Club.
I see.
So
Well,
this is something that they could also get involved in. But I would also like it to be in our community. So I need to do a little bit of investigation, but I would also like to have your contact. Tammy, would you be willing to send us an
Yes.
email where you put both of us in and then I'll have it?
I will. Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
but I have a question for you, Wally.
yes.
Do you say that it's better for kids under the age of 15 to be vaccinated at that age because you're worried about their future promiscuity or early sexual relations? Or
Yeah.
is it because the vaccine has more power
Right.
as they get older?
Yeah. Good question. No, it's because once they become sexually active, then the transmission of the virus is very ubiquitous. So, yeah, it's not, and you can vaccinate boys and girls even in 8, 9, 10. It doesn't matter as long as they get it before there's some sexual activity, and everyone, because it's sexual, then everyone presumes it's promiscuous. But it doesn't matter. A girl can have no sexual relationships with anybody except her husband, future husband. But if your future husband's being exposed, then she's exposed. So basically, it's not. It's obviously a little more common in sex trade workers, but it's something that affects all of us. The other thing I neglected to say is that there's so many other viruses that cause miserable diseases from HPV, and one of them are anal genital warts, and also it can cause, which affects 30 million women and men around the world each year. It causes warts in the trachea, in the breathing tubes of your lungs, which can sometimes be lethal, but is a horrible disease, and that's up to 40,000 people around the world every year. So this HPV vaccine has 9 variants, and some of them cover these benign ones, benign meaning not cancer, but miserable. So fortunately, the vaccination used to require 3. Now they can do it in 1 vaccination, and they can cover 9 variants instead of in the past only 2 variants. So it's progressed really quickly in the last 10 years.
Okay. When is the next time you're coming to Guatemala?
Well, if we get our grant approved, hopefully in March or so, to a training camp. And I don't know if you want to also get in touch with Ariel Marroquin in Faith and Practice. La Fen and Practica is his organization. He's kind of the point person for getting together all these other NGOs. I don't think they're all the NGOs, but there's a lot of them that we're going to be working synergistically with.
Okay, so as soon as you get contact information, I'll ask you to send those to me.
Okay, good. We'll do that.
So that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I look forward to future collaboration.
The very heartwarming thing we did in Guatemala City was run a screening clinic for the women on the dump called Camino Salud is their thing, and we found 25% of the
Passage, Camino Seguro.
Seguro? Okay. Anyway, it was
Seguro.
Yeah.
The director is Erin Mooney.
Yes, and we found 25% of the women had precancers, so we treated them, and that's going to be part of our project also to screen these marginalized women. What a life! I mean, living on the dump with kids and anyway.
Did you go on the tour and see the dump from the cliff up above?
No, I did.
It's pretty depressing.
Yeah, I thank you. I think probably won't go on that tour. Although
No,
I,
you should. It's very educational.
yeah, I'm sure.
Sorry to interrupt. Kit, do you have a question?
I do. Actually, it's one or two. First of all, the impact of your presentation. I just texted my daughter and said, did my granddaughter have her vaccination? And
Yeah.
she said yes. And both parents have. And
Yes,
so
good.
that's the follow-up to that is I understand that in North America, HIV is now very popular among older men and women because they're discovering the joys of sex without kids around.
Yes.
Are you seeing that? And does it, what kind of vaccination? Is that too late to start or what?
Well, no, because I mean, I think that if you look at it from public health point of view, the best and your best bang for your buck is to deal with the young kids. But older people can get infected, and they can get some of these variants that are miserable. So there is definitely health advantages of getting vaccinated for older people that are still going to be sexually active with other partners.
Okay, good questions, everyone. This is a fascinating topic. I'm sure we could spend a lot more time on, and maybe we'll have you back another time, Wally, to update.
Sure.
I'm going to ask Sue now from Sue Cesco from the Rotary Club of Jasper to share their experiences with the recent Jasper fires.
Oh,
Go ahead, Sue.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to come and join your club and share some information and what's happening in Jasper. Like you said, my name is Sue Cesco. I live in Jasper. I am a proud Rotarian. I am a member of the Jasper Rotary Club, in which we have 21 active members, and we were founded in 1997, just to give you a bit of a background about us. I'm curious, by show of hands, before I switch to my presentation, how many people have been to Jasper?
Okay.
Oh, it's almost unanimous here, so that's a great start, I'd say. Well, I'm just going to take you on a little tour back to Jasper today, and if I can share my screen here, I'll try to do that first. Get that. And are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah.
Let's just go to
No.
play. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Let me just get that okay out of here. Here we go. This is actually I can't get rid of that. Okay, but that's there. This is actually some pictures of just some of our club members in action, just to give you a little idea of who we are. And we are a pretty active club. And of course, the fire has really changed so much in Jasper. I'll just give you a taste of things. One of the things that to remember is that our mountains are still there. We definitely still have a lot of beauty around us. And I noticed this video this morning, so I'm going to see if I can get it to click, because it'll give you a good sense of what Jasper is looking at like right now.
Really, really hard to make sure that the mountain was going to be open for the winter and that we could invite people back and support the economy of Jasper.
Marmot's preparing for an estimated 200,000 plus visitors on these slopes this winter, which provides a big economic boost to the town of Jasper.
Without Marmot being open, I don't know that we would have enough business to be able to keep the lights on.
Mike Day owns Evil Dave's Grill and is also on the board of Tourism Jasper, the marketing organization for the town and national park. Day says the town's entire economy depends on tourism.
80% of our tax base is driven by the commercial sector. That means all of the amenities that the residents have to enjoy come from the direct relationship to the visitor economy.
Back on the mountain, Brian Road is hopeful Jasper's post-wildfire offering for visitors is still compelling.
Look at the peaks. The fire has really changed the landscape a lot, but up here and around Jasper, it's still remarkably beautiful.
It's certainly hard to argue with that.
I just wanted to share that with you so that you could in fact see the beautiful mountains are still there. And as that gentleman said, it is a challenging time right now. It is really quiet, and the Marmot Basin just opened last weekend, so we're starting to see people returning a little bit here. So if I go to my next slide, I just wanted to give you an overall look at what it looks like in some areas. This is actually a picture that's taken from the Moline Canyon Overlook. So if many of you might have been to Moline Canyon, it's a popular attraction. So this is the overlook, and it's looking down into the valley of the Athabasca River and towards the town of Jasper. There's a lot of places that are still absolutely unaffected by the fire, but you can see from the map that it's quite a wide range of, it was quite a few, it's about 30 kilometers long from the town of Jasper to Athabasca Falls. So it was extremely extensive, and of course our entire town had to evacuate. Everybody safely evacuated within 24 hours pretty much. They also had to clear out 20,000 guests that were part of campers. They had to clear out all the campgrounds, and so far our campgrounds have not been reopened. However, my understanding is there is going to be some campground reservations upcoming in January, so they will announce which ones. I just wanted to show this picture of the fire because I showed the picture that it actually got up to the north, just towards the town of Jasper, and you can see from this picture that it went right through the west end of town, destroying about 30% of the structures in Jasper. Many of those structures were apartment buildings. So it is actually closer to 50% of the homes. And Jasper already had a housing problem. So this is more extreme than any of us could have imagined. And you can see the fire actually went all the way around the town and had a lot of fear for residents that it was going to come back on the town. When you hear people say that the fighting the fire was successful, even though so much town burned, what was the big success is that all the infrastructure remained. The firefighters were able to prevent fire of the hospital, of the schools, of the water treatment facility, and of the senior centers, of our activity center. So we are all just so relieved for that, because that's the reason that we still have a town. So those firefighters certainly did magic. This is just a picture of the Icefield Parkway Road. On the left-hand side is Honeymoon Lake, so you get an idea of what the fire looks like on the landscape. And then driving north, obviously, it's a popular summer activity for people to come camping, and we're hoping to have that renewed. This is the return of town. When we were allowed to come back, we actually had to be away from town for 4 weeks before we were allowed to come back into the community while they were fighting the fire. So this was our return. All the first responders were waiting, and you had to come in this one entrance. And this was an emotional coming through and seeing these people was pretty incredible. So you can see there's still lots of areas of the town that look quite natural as well. Oh, actually, in this picture, if you can see, there's the appliances on the curb. So one of the things we had to do is get rid of our appliances for so many spoiled foods and for 4 weeks without power. Now in Jasper, you can't just take your appliance and leave it on the curb. As you can see, that's across the street from me where the bears are there. So all the appliance removal had to be coordinated right down to when you were going to have someone come and pick up your appliance. They come right into the house and they take it right away. This is only here because the picture doesn't show the moving van that's right there about to remove this appliance, but you don't have time a lot of times before bears might come in. So that was one of the things when we first arrived. The town was very quiet, but there were a lot of bears, a lot. And of course, when we first arrived, Red Cross had set up a big area, and we had a nice welcoming recovery center that had a lot of essential services, including mental health, insurance bureaus, whole number of different things all come together so that when people could return, they could have some resources to help them recover and get their home ready to live in. There are many people that still are not back. Obviously, their homes are lost. And then there are some whose homes were damaged enough that they're still not back either. And many businesses in the same case. So one of the things that was important to us, we knew that a lot of the economy, the jobs have been affected. The tourism sector isn't back yet. And the food bank was already really a high use social benefit here that we have in Jasper. And it still is, it's being used probably about the same as it was before the fire, but the difference being right now, we only have half the population. So there is a real strain on young families. Employment has really affected those people right now with not a return to normalcy quite yet. And we're seeing a lot of movement. There's a lot of families that moved during the evacuation, found other opportunities and did not return, and other people that did return but now are finding they don't have the opportunities that they used to have and are looking for other options, or people that don't have a place to live anymore as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty going on in Jasper for sure. One of the things we were able to do is we've been working with Jasper's teens, part of the community outreach services and the team from the youth Helping Hands is a group that tries to focus on mental health benefits for young people ages 13 to 17. So for years we had been doing this trick or eat program where we'd go door to door and actually try to get food for the food bank. During COVID, we couldn't do that. So we started a new program with the youth that we created a pumpkin path. And we worked with the teens to actually carve pumpkins, make pumpkins, create a display, and then invited the city to come and walk through the display and either leave a food bank item, or we really encouraged the leaving of cash so that food banks could just decide what they wanted to do themselves. So this is something that we actually used the funds from your club, which we greatly appreciate. We certainly appreciate all the offers of help we had from our Rotary network. It was beautiful to see the magic of Rotary coming together. And we purchased 75 pumpkins, and we actually then get the teens to carve these pumpkins. This year, there were only about 48 teens. Normally, there's about 75. And again, that's because not everybody has returned. So the teens were happy that some of them got to do 2 pumpkins this year as well. So they made the best of that. And then they set up all the displays all over and then invite people to come in and leave a donation. A few spin-offs too is that there are a lot of events leading up to it. So we actually, the teens will have their own carving events to come out and have a social fellowship opportunity where they're, doing their creativity with the pumpkins. And then it's also filtered out to some of the younger groups and also the seniors. So it's just a really nice program that is really all inclusive to the community. So this year we actually took it inside to the curling rink, which was really easy to manage, not having to worry about weather challenges. So they basically, here's some of the teens here, and they set up the route where you can come and walk through and see all of their pumpkin creations. So just a few pictures here. The one in the middle on the bottom I wanted to show you because in the picture there is a couple of our members. One, Cheryl Nelson, she's a founding member of our club, and next to her is Danielle Stewart, our newest member of the club. So they were there to help take donations with Square transactions for the teens. And then in terms of other spin-offs, it's just really great to get our word out in the community about who Rotary are and how we're trying to help the community. And people are very aware that we're involved with this project. We're part of the leadership, and also then we are fundraising for the food bank. So with your contribution of $1,000, we were able to also match that ourselves. And then the teens were able to fundraise an additional $800 for the food bank. And in addition, I thought I could leave this on the table there for you next year. We also had fellowship with our club. And so our meetings are a Zoom hybrid type of meeting. So you can either go in person or on Zoom because we have members all over, like Libby in Nanaimo. And we actually did a pumpkin carving on our Zoom and then just had a fellowship evening. It was quite a lot of fun. And of course, then our benefit is then to the food bank, one of the great programs that exist. And we are actually, we have a few other things that we're trying to do with the Rotary Club as part of the recovery. Just in this week, we hosted a psychological first aid course supported by Red Cross, and trying to work on the mental health and just trying to help prepare people for what we know is a challenging future for us. And in addition, one of the things we want to try to do is bring people together again as much as we can. We have members of our community scattered all over Canada, in fact. And one of our annual activities we do is we've hosted a seniors luncheon that takes place at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. They provide the meal, the drinks, and we help them serve that meal. This year, we're going to provide busing from the neighboring town as well, so that we can bring some of our seniors back. It's just a really lovely launch of the holiday season, and really, we are so excited. This will be the first time we've got to see many of these faces since the fire all coming together. So we're quite looking forward to that. And I just wanted to share, in terms of our fundraising, that's a major change for us. It's not so easy to go back to businesses and ask them for donations for our silent auctions. So we're really having to look at what we'll be doing differently in the upcoming year. And some of our regular events that we had planned normally, we didn't go forward with because we knew that there'd be too much pressures on the community and it wasn't the right time. So I just wanted to share a couple of our other fundraisers that we have going on. Libby in the picture here with Greg, her husband, they're standing in front of cases of jam made by our Jamalama Libby herself. So we're selling those jams in the community, and it's always a great word of mouth when people hear that Libby's Jam is back in town. And we sell those. And the other great fundraiser that we were doing last year was our first year. We did, we actually were the marshals for the Jasper Banff relay run, which is a really fun coming together of all of our team. And it was a great benefit as we were the recipient of the funds that they were able to raise there. And really important that I share you this is because we're going to do it again next year. So all of you who are ready to come to Jasper, I've already told you we're ready to receive you. So we would welcome you to come and join us for the Jasper Banff Relay in June, when and I'll get the exact date sent to your club, so that if anybody wants to join in as volunteers, we'd love to have you. And essentially, there was a phrase that our mayor said in the early days, and it's the optimism that we all hold. If there are homes for some, there is community for all. And that's really, I think, where our Rotary Club is really trying to work as well, is trying to bring community together and just try to use the magic of Rotary to help with the town itself. So I thank you for helping us with the program and making a donation and really for walking with us on this path of recovery.
Well, thank
Have any
you.
questions?
Yes, does anyone have a question for Sue?
Thank you, Sue. It's Libby speaking here. I just want to say an extra thank you for you guys' club for coming out with your generous donation, and it really is going mainly to the mental health of the teens and of the people in Jasper, in youth and in seniors, and also it's going to the food bank, and the food bank is in dire straits of needing funds. And it's so cool that the area that the teens wanted to put their money that they raised, they put it towards the food bank, and then we matched it. So as our club, and also with you guys' donations. So thanks for that. Yeah, so food bank and mental health are their main priorities. Thank you.
Thank you.
For that great presentation.
Well, it's been another fantastic fellowship assembly. Thanks to Kim for putting this together. We've had two excellent presenters today. Walley, as I mentioned, very fascinating topic. And Sue and Libby, we're just so happy to see that our donation went to help out as you mentioned, with the mental health and the food, it's always the magic of Rotary, as Sue mentioned. Anybody have any comments or questions before we end today? Doug?
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. Susan, thank you for your presentation. I have two quick questions. Well, questions are quick, maybe the answers are long. But do you see Jasper at some point coming to a full recovery? Will it be the vibrant place that it used to be? I mean, I know it's going to be different, but is the growth there?
Yeah, you know what? It's definitely going to be a few years. In fact, when they when they first started, we were allowed to return. They wanted to give people expectations, because you can see a lot of pictures of what the fire was like, but it's really stunning when you stand in front of it for yourself. But like that's one of the things is most of the community of Jasper, the downtown core, was preserved. So from a visitor perspective, coming to Jasper, most everything will still be there for you. In fact, the Marmot Ski Hill this winter is the biggest attraction. And in fact, a lot of the ski trails for cross country will also be new attractions, because a lot of the snow can actually reach the trails now. So we will have trails groomed in areas. We kind of joke in town, there's a few people that are always on the landscape, and we would joke and say, oh, now we can see them when they leave town. We can see where they're going. So there's so much in nature that's still here, and even the burned areas have this really interesting features. It's fascinating, just truly fascinating, the way the fire is on the landscape. But it's going to be years and years. I mean, I don't know. The summer is really uncertain for so many because the housing issue. So even when we do a visitor's return, will we have the service power that we need to go with it? So we are trying to make sure visitors understand the expectations a little different. There will be some changes, and the area in town that's most affected by the fire has been signed, and there's just asking people to be respectful and stay out of that area, because really it's more of a construction zone now. And we'll see with the Alberta government. They've stepped in and said they're going to build 250 homes. That infrastructure is already getting in place to be able to place those into the area. And yeah, it is a long road ahead. I don't think it's going to be within the next 3 years, personally, even, that we start looking normal. I would say even closer to 5 to 10, maybe, where we're starting to feel that businesses are starting to get a normalcy, which is a really long haul for so many, because of course, COVID, we had another fire. Like, it is a back to back to back on so many of our people here in Jasper. So it is a struggle, but we also are ready and excited to have people back, because that is really back to the core of the community as well.
Thank you. Great. And the other quick question is, how do individuals make donations directly to the community?
Well, there's the community, what's it called actually? Jasper Community Team Society. They actually were fundraising throughout the fire, and there was $1.7 million contributed to them throughout internationally, because Jasper is an international place, and we sure heard outpouring of love and affection for people who had already been here. And the other thing, yeah, the Jasper Food Bank is another option, and that's what we are doing as well. We're putting funds there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I can
You're
share
welcome.
that.
Thank you.
I can share that information with Tammy.
Sure.
And
I'll put it in the newsletter.
Thank you.
Or bulletin, I should say.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, again, thank you to all of our RECCO members for showing up. And we just love opportunities like this to hear these great stories and facts, and gives us things to think about and ways to consider where we spend future dollars. So thank you, everyone. Going to stop the recording now. And if you had a question or want to stick around for a minute, I'll be on here. And definitely thank you again to Walley and to Sue.
Yeah,
you
thanks
for
very
having
much
us.
for the presentations. They were awesome.
Jasper the bear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It snuck in from outside.